Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates is a new R-rated comedy brought to us from the guys who wrote the first two Neighbors films, and this is based off a true story. Sort of. It is based off the actual Mike and Dave Stangle brothers in real life who put out a Craigslist ad to find dates for their cousin's wedding. In this movie, it's their sister. However, where this story differs is that the dates they end up getting, played by Anna Kendrick and Aubrey Plaza, instead of being respectable women, are hot messes and might be even worse than those two. Now, I didn't really have that much hype going into this movie. I saw the trailers, and trailer 2 was slightly better, but overall, nothing they were advertising to me really hooked me on this movie. The only two things that had me intrigued to see it were, number one, Anna Kendrick. That's kind of obvious. If you've been watching my channel for a while now, you know how I feel about this amazing woman. And the second one is that this film is written by the guys who wrote Neighbors and Neighbors 2 Sorority Rising. And as I've mentioned before, I enjoyed those two films quite a bit, so I was a little bit curious to see how this movie was going to turn out. That being said, I had little to no expectations going in. So that's probably why I walked away having a somewhat decent time with this movie. It's definitely not a perfect or amazing new comedy. Even the people that liked it, I don't think they even said that this was amazing or anything like that. But for what it is, just kind of a fun, disposable, R-rated comedy, I think it succeeds. The comedic chemistry between Adam Devine and Zac Efron was easily one of the best things about this film. They had so much energy bouncing off each other. They told some really funny jokes with each other as well. They were one of the strongest parts of this film. You could really feel the charisma behind them. And Zac Efron, I was especially really surprised with, because earlier this year, he was in Dirty Grandpa, and that's one of the worst R-rated comedies of all time. So I'm glad that Zac Efron actually can be good in an R-rated comedy. But if I gotta be honest here, Adam Devine in some parts kind of stole the show. My biggest laughs honestly came from him, especially one scene involving just his reaction to something that was happening. I was dying. As for the other duo, Anna Kendrick and Aubrey Plaza, I think they were too, but they were very more hit or miss compared to the Stangle brothers, because it does take a while, for me at least, to get used to these characters, because they do kind of start off very unlikable. They party a lot, they drink a lot, they do drugs. So it did take me a while to actually get behind them as characters, especially since some of the jokes they were telling weren't that funny. There are some parts that I did laugh at, and one or two jokes that I actually were dying at that they told, but for the most part they were very hit or miss. Especially Aubrey Plaza's character, who I eventually got used to, but in comparison to Mike or Dave or even Alice, played by Anna Kendrick, there really wasn't that much there for me to say, oh, she's actually a really good character in this film. They try to shoehorn in some character growth for her, but I just don't really think it worked. But then you have Anna Kendrick, who at first, like Aubrey Plaza, she did take a while to get used to. I will admit that. As much as I love her, I will admit that it did take a while for me to actually get used to her. But eventually, when she's starting to talk to Zac Efron a little bit, and we see their chemistry a bit, I actually started to like her a lot more. So eventually, I actually started to like her character. It's just Aubrey Plaza, I think they could have done a better job growing her. But as far as these four leads in this film, they were easily the most entertaining part. They're the best characters in this film, and that's where I'm going to start segueing into my cons. Even though none of the actors are horrible, and there's only really one character that I can think of that was actually annoying, none of those characters I could honestly really get behind them, because there really isn't that much there for any of them for me to actually get behind them like, yeah, I like you, man or woman. It was just the four leads that I really enjoyed as characters. Not to say that the rest of the cast wasn't funny, because there were times where they made me laugh. It's just as characters, I didn't really buy into them. Jeannie, the sister of Mike and Dave, the sweetest sister, they'll do anything for her. I didn't really get behind her as a character. There's one scene that she's in that I was dying laughing at, and she was kind of funny. There are some jokes that obviously do miss, but that is kind of the case with some comedies these days. It's just as a character, I just didn't see what was so sweet or special about her that Mike and Dave really loved about her. The one character that I mentioned earlier that was really annoying, there's a bisexual cousin that eventually shoehorns her way into this film, and she was really annoying. She probably could have ended up being one of the standouts of this film, but the way they wrote this character, how she's actually portrayed, was really unfunny. And if they took her out of the movie, I probably wouldn't have noticed, which is kind of weird because she's more of a rival to Adam Devine's character, but she doesn't really do that much for me to go, oh, Adam Devine, you gotta stick it to your cousin, man. No, she just kind of shows up, is annoying, and then leaves. shows up again in another scene, is annoying, then leaves, and then shows up again in one last scene, is annoying, and then leaves, and maybe she's in the background of the finale or something. My final flaw with this movie is that the plot is definitely very cliche. We've definitely seen some of the stuff in this movie in other movies before. You can kind of already tell where the plot is going to go with each scene that passes by, and I think I would have been a lot more upset with this film if I didn't enjoy myself with the 4 lead characters. I think if those 4 characters were really unfunny, I think if I wasn't laughing for the majority of the time, I think I would have ended up hating this movie. But I can't deny I did laugh, and I was surprised by that because a couple people I know were saying that this is one of the worst of the year. It's like Dirty Grandpa if it was a romantic comedy, and I was going in like, alright, here we go, Dirty Grandpa 2.0, here we go. But walking out of this movie, I do not see how this is almost as bad as Dirty Grandpa at all. Definitely not an amazing film. This movie does not break any new ground for R-rated comedies, but as a fun, decent little R-rated comedy, I think it actually works. I'm gonna give Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates a B-. I wish this movie was a little bit more clever, I wish it wasn't as cliched, and I wish I could get behind the other characters, but as far as the 4 lead characters, especially Mike and Dave, I really enjoyed them, and their jokes for the most part were really funny, only a couple misses here and there, but for the most part, I actually had a decent time with this film. But if you've seen Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates, leave in the comments below of what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching, make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher, see you guys next time.